During the call, Kubo was informed by the speaker that he had reached his limit and would be resigning from the company that day. Additionally, it was mentioned that both T-san and S-san would also be resigning. Kubo expressed his concern, emphasizing the impending delivery deadline the next day. He proposed a meeting at the company to discuss the situation further. However, the call abruptly ended mid-sentence, leaving Kubo to listen to the beep indicating the disconnection. Despite his repeated pleas for assistance echoing in his mind, Kubo found himself sitting on the commode, contemplating the looming deadline and the disbandment of his team. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of cruel joke was being played on him. In order to meet the deadline, he resolved to continue working without taking any breaks or returning home. Attempting to rise, Kubo's vision began to dim, forcing him to lean against the wall for support. Recognizing the signs of overexertion, he wrapped an arm around his stomach and decided to take a brief respite. Suddenly, a commanding voice startled him, urging him not to fall asleep so casually. Startled, Kubo quickly regained his composure. The voice instructed him to promptly disembark from the carriage. Perplexed, Kubo questioned the identity of the individual. As he rose to his feet, he collided with an object, prompting him to question whether he was supposed to be sleeping in the restroom. Stammering an apology, he pondered if he was experiencing a dream. Losing his balance and emitting a surprised noise, Kubo found himself questioning the source of the voice once again. He extends his hand to steady himself and is surprised to find it grasped by a child's hand. His fingers inadvertently splash a small puddle on the ground, eliciting a pained utterance. As he gazes into the puddle, he is startled by the reflection of a child and recoils with a scream, realizing the presence of the child within the reflection. Another voice interrupts, admonishing him for being in the way. Once she departs, he remains seated, contemplating the surreal turn of events. Meanwhile, in the background, the man who had previously shouted at him offers food to someone nearby, emphasizing the need for gratitude. Kubo, grappling with the stark reality before him, muses on the bewildering situation. He scrutinizes his hands, pondering the changes that have befallen him. Clenching his head in desperation, he silently implores for someone to awaken him from this nightmare, all while mindful of the looming delivery deadline on the 15th. His despondent reverie is interrupted by a girl's voice as she places a plate before him, filled halfway with food. Recognizing her as the same girl from earlier, he listens as she apathetically remarks that if he had been injured severely, he would have had an easier chance at death. Bewildered by her callousness, Kubo wonders about her intentions. She curtly instructs him to eat, warning that no one will purchase him otherwise. Anxiously, Kubo repeats her words in a questioning tone, seeking clarity on their destination. She appears puzzled by his ignorance, stating that they are en route to the capital's slave market. Shocked and dismayed, Kubo finds himself shackled and put on display before a gathering of onlookers. The announcer declares that the slave auction is about to commence, sending a chill down Kubo's spine as he listens intently to the announcements. Amidst the murmurs of the crowd, a man's voice rings out, indicating that the bidding will start with a 6-year-old boy on the right, with an opening bid of 1,000 grams. Kubo's heart sinks at the realization that he is the first to be auctioned. He overhears a conversation behind him, where one man expresses a willingness to pay at least 1,000 grams, while another suggests disposing of him if there are no buyers. As the bidding descends from 1,000 grams to 600, Kubo grapples with the harsh reality of his situation, feeling utterly lost in a world he scarcely comprehends, resigned to an uncertain fate as a slave. Casting his gaze across the crowd, Kubo locks eyes momentarily with a couple who briefly glance his way. He dismisses the fleeting connection as mere imagination when they turn away, engrossed in their own conversation. The announcer's inquiry about any further bidders signals the end of hope for Kubo, resigned to his fate. He is ushered into a room by the announcer, who impatiently urges him to enter. Kubo apologizes to an unseen figure for the delay, presenting himself as the desired merchandise they had awaited. He addresses this individual as Lady Bassam, recognizing her as the one who had previously made eye contact with him. The announcer, bowing with a gentlemanly demeanor, declares that without further delay, they shall proceed with the ownership transfer process. He requests Kubo to extend his hand and also signals to the servant nearby to do the same. Kubo, uncertain of the proceedings, complies obediently, extending his shackled hands. A peculiar light emanates from his wrists, prompting Kubo to inquire about its nature. However, he is swiftly silenced by the announcer, reprimanded for interrupting the transfer. Intrigued by the possibility of magic, Kubo finds his wrists suddenly free from their restraints. The announcer respectfully bids Lady Bassam farewell, seeking permission to depart. The man accompanying Lady Bassam, now referred to as his master, inquires about the name for the newly acquired slave. Lady Bassam, appearing to recall this detail, places a hand on Kubo's cheek and decides to name him Linos. Overwhelmed with relief, Linos wonders if this means he has been spared. As they begin to leave, Linos attempts to express his gratitude, only to be interrupted by Lady Bassam's companion, who introduces her as Lady Bassam Fawn Urza and instructs Linos to address her as his master. Introducing himself as Falco, he remarks on Linos' unkempt appearance, acknowledging that it cannot be helped but expressing his distaste for Linos' current state of cleanliness. Observing the nearby well, Falco retrieves a bucket of water and douses Linos with it, eliciting a startled reaction from Linos. Despite Linos' protests, Falco insists he remain still. With a small incantation, Falco envelops Linos in a shimmering glow, cleansing him with magical bubbles. Amazed by his newfound cleanliness, Linos remarks on the effectiveness of the magic. However, Falco's annoyance is evident as he attributes the result to the type of magic he employed. Intrigued by the prospect of magic in this world, Linos eagerly questions Falco about its prevalence. Falco, surprised by Linos' ignorance, inquires about his origins, asserting that knowledge of magic is common sense. He then reveals Linos' latent potential, identifying him as a prospective shield master. Falco explains that he discerned this through the use of appraisal magic at the slave market, clarifying that it reveals individuals' abilities. According to the appraisal, Linos possesses promising talent. Falco elaborates on the significance of Linos' role, highlighting the need for a shield master to safeguard Lady Bassam due to the political complexities surrounding her noble house. However, he humorously remarks on Linos' novice status, likening him to an egg rather than a fully fledged protector. Despite Linos' protestations, Falco affirms the reliability of the appraisal magic, emphasizing its accuracy. Linos reflects on Falco's words, realizing their gravity, and dismissing any notion of jest. Assertively, he declares that they shall proceed directly to the mansion. Falco, taking on the role of guide, points out Juka Castle to Linos, explaining its significance as the residence of the king and its self-sustaining capabilities through agriculture. He underscores the castle's formidable defenses, with high walls and a single entrance, rendering it impregnable. As they approach the Bassam residence, Falco indicates the servants' entrance, emphasizing its distinction from the guest gate. Linos, apprehensive yet relieved to have arrived, steps through the small back door, only to be met with a sudden jolt of electricity. Falco hurriedly clarifies that unauthorized entry triggers defensive magic. Their intrusion is interrupted by another voice, belonging to Warsa, who appears with a commanding presence. Observing Linos with a mix of curiosity and scrutiny, Warsa deduces his newcomer status. Falco explains Linos' role as a slave with the potential of a barrier master, highlighting his responsibility for Linos' training. Thus, Linos is introduced to Warsa, establishing his presence within the Bassam household. As Warsa's hearty pat lands on Linos' back, he staggers, nearly losing consciousness. She reassures him, expressing her optimism about their future collaboration. Collapsing to the ground, Linos is quickly attended to by Falco, who warns him of Warsa's proficiency in martial arts, emphasizing the consequences of disobedience. Redirecting the conversation, Falco inquires about Linos' meal status, receiving a negative response. Warsa takes charge, offering to escort Linos to his room and the dining area along the way, a suggestion he readily agrees with. Before departing, Falco affectionately tousles Linos' hair, advising him to eat heartily in preparation for the following day's training. Surveying the spread of food before him, Linos' eyes widen in appreciation. Despite Warsa's encouragement to partake, he hesitates, opting for a piece of bread. Concerned, Warsa questions his reluctance, to which Linos denies any aversion, expressing gratitude for the kindness extended to him despite his slave status. Warsa empathetically acknowledges the harsh treatment some slaves endure but assures Linos that the Bassam family operates differently, emphasizing the importance of his nourishment and strength for his intended role as a master of barriers. With agreement and gratitude, Linos accepts her guidance and thanks her for the meal. As Warsa guides him through the mansion, she impresses upon Linos the importance of familiarizing himself with the layout. Gesturing towards different areas, she delineates the first floor's functions, including the reception area, guest bedrooms, kitchen, and bathroom. Moving to the second floor, she points out Lady Urza and the Lord's chambers, noting the latter's infrequent presence due to his duties at the castle. She also mentions the location of the servants' quarters at the end of the hallway. Linos observes Warsa's meticulous explanations and finds himself admiring her kindness. Warsa then directs Linos' attention to his own room, situated nearby hers. Puzzled by the arrangement, Linos voices his concern, prompting Warsa to playfully smack him on the back once more, assuring him that she would never relegate him to the stables. Entering his room, Warsa acknowledges its disarray, explaining that it hasn't been used in some time. She hands Linos a bucket and takes up a broom, suggesting they clean together. Grateful for her assistance, Linos marvels at the unexpected camaraderie. Warsa clarifies his responsibilities, which include assisting with miscellaneous tasks and learning proper manners. Linos readily agrees as they set to work, he wringing out a towel and she shaking off dust from the covers. Warsa elaborates on the daily routine within the household: early rising, 3 meals a day, and retiring at night, a cycle Linos now finds himself a part of. Warsa acknowledges the challenges Linos will face adjusting to his new life, but assures him of occasional holidays and the necessity of practicing his magic. She emphasizes the importance of self-improvement, prompting Linos to reflect on the whirlwind of changes he's experiencing. After they finish cleaning, Warsa bids him farewell, which he hesitantly reciprocates before she closes the door behind her. Alone in his room, Linos contemplates the tumultuous events unfolding around him. Grateful for his current circumstances, he acknowledges his luck in having food to eat and a place of his own. However, his thoughts turn dark as he remembers abandoning his previous plans, feeling trapped and exploited by his former company. Gazing out of the window, Linos ponders the possibility of returning to his old life, but questions whether he would truly find happiness there. Frustrated and restless, he resolves to push these thoughts aside and sleep for the night. The next day, under Falco's guidance, Linos begins his magic training. Falco instructs him to visualize a barrier surrounding himself, guiding him through the process of manifesting it. As Linos concentrates, he feels the warmth of his blood and envisions water forming a protective sphere around him. With a sense of disbelief, Linos opens his eyes to find his barrier materialized, albeit imperfectly. Despite its flaws, he rejoices in the realization of his newfound ability. Amazed by his newfound ability, Linos marvels at his hands, realizing he has performed magic. However, his moment of awe is abruptly interrupted as Falco strikes him on the head, chastising him for losing focus. Grimacing in pain, Linos listens as Falco explains the rarity and significance of being a barrier master, responsible for protecting important individuals. Despite Falco's reassurance that learning to use the ability is relatively simple, Linos finds little solace in the gravity of his newfound role. Falco emphasizes the necessity of magic power and mental strength for accurately identifying and maintaining barriers, especially in combat situations where lives are at stake. He stresses the consequences of failure, with the potential for death looming closer in this world. Despite Linos' youth, Falco praises his quick learning ability, but maintains a jovial demeanor, assuring Linos that he will teach him everything he needs to know. Transitioning to defensive magic, Falco explains the intricacies of creating a siege shield. Linos is amazed as a plate-like barrier materializes in his palm at Falco's instruction. Observing the barrier's structure, Linos begins to grasp its mechanics. Falco instructs him to remain still as he prepares to demonstrate an attack, surrounded by wind. With determination in his eyes, Linos braces himself as Falco initiates the assault. Linos is frozen in disbelief, grappling with the surreal turn of events. As a loud boom reverberates through the snowy forest, Falco remarks on Linos' survival with a hint of amusement, mentioning his newfound ability to use healing magic. Despite Falco's attempt to lighten the mood, Linos' inner turmoil intensifies, mentally pleading with his mentor not to trivialize the gravity of the situation. As they walk, Falco informs Linos of his plan to visit the pub, instructing Linos to return home first. Linos bows in gratitude, though Falco seems preoccupied and doesn't acknowledge the gesture. Hungry and emotionally drained, Linos heads home, only to be greeted by the sound of someone yelling nearby. Turning to investigate, Linos witnesses a horrifying scene, a giant man viciously kicking a boy around his age, relentlessly berating him for failing to complete his tasks. The boy pleads for forgiveness, but the man shows no mercy, asserting his dominance over the helpless child. Linos is horrified by the brutality of the scene, realizing the harsh reality of life as a slave. Shocked by the lack of intervention from bystanders, Linos comprehends the normalized cruelty endured by those in servitude. As he watches the abuse unfold before him, Linos is struck by the chilling realization that he could have easily been the one suffering under the man's wrath. As he passed through the small door, he kept his head down. Initially, he had presumed everything would be fine, but now a sense of unease gripped him. The massive door swung open, revealing Warsa standing behind it, her face adorned with a broad smile as she exclaimed her recognition of him. Commending him for his performance and training, she conveyed Lady Urza's instruction for him to report to her chambers upon his return. He expressed hesitant gratitude as Warsa affectionately patted him on the head, informing him that dinner would soon be served and instructing him to proceed to the dining hall once his meeting concluded. With a slight blush coloring his cheeks, he touched the spot where Warsa had patted him and offered his thanks. Presenting him with a selection of courtly attire, Warsa explained that these garments were intended for him. Recognizing their appropriateness, Lady Basim encouraged him to try them on, while the butler standing nearby also smiled in approval. After donning the attire, he hesitated, questioning whether it was appropriate for him to accept such splendid clothing. Lady Basim insisted, reminding him of his status as a member of the household. Gratefully accepting, he placed a gloved hand over his heart, expressing his sincere thanks. Amidst his gratitude, he couldn't shake the feeling of being a stranger in this unfamiliar world. He understands the importance of diligence in contributing to the welfare of the household's residents. Lady Basim offers a warm smile, affirming that the attire suits him well. Warsa approaches with a bowl of steaming food, noting his new clothes and receiving compliments from others on his appearance. A maid advises him to eat slowly to avoid soiling his fresh attire, while another hands plates to Linos, instructing him to set the table. The kitchen reverberates with activity as preparations continue. As a salad bowl is placed before him, the conversation among the maids turns to gossip. Speculation arises about King Fan's new mistress, met with commentary on governmental matters instead. Amidst fawning remarks about Prince Orland, the maids discuss Lady Urza's role as the prince's private tutor, and the lord's involvement in government affairs. It's noted that the Basim family holds the prince's complete trust, a fact of which they are proud. However, a maid, turning to him with a sour expression, mentions that there are individuals who harbor negative opinions about this trust. As he nervously utters a quiet okay, Warsa elaborates on the individuals rumored to hold high positions: the king's younger brother, Duke Hela, and Marshal Karugi from the kingdom's army. Linos wonders about the consequences if such disrespectful rumors were to spread, but he begins to grasp the situation. Warsa's expression shifts from contentment to concern as she recalls something and inquires about the arrival of a certain individual. Assured by a maid that everything is in order, Linos becomes curious about this person's identity. Unbeknownst to him, the very individual in question is making her way through the hallway toward Lady Urza's room. Welcomed by the head butler Winton as Miss Errol. Cheerfully greeting Winton and expressing her joy at seeing him well, Miss Errol opens the door and announces her arrival to her great-aunt, Lady Urza, who greets her with a smile, remarking on her early arrival. Miss Errol explains that her haste was driven by her eagerness to see Lady Urza as soon as possible, despite the usual delays associated with travel from the Jug Kingdom. In the servants' quarters, Linos gathers that the young miss has completed her military training. The maid elaborates, explaining that Miss Errol was married at the age of 12 as per tradition, but later divorced due to her inability to conceive. Upon returning to the mansion, Lady Urza decided to continue Miss Errol's childhood passion for sword training, prompting her journey to the Jug Kingdom to train under the Holy Sword Master. Miss Errol expresses to her great-aunt her determination to take on the role of protector, ensuring Falco can remain by Lady Urza's side, thereby strengthening the mansion's defense. Lady Urza's countenance darkens at this declaration. The maid further explains that Miss Errol's swordsmanship now rivals that of the Holy Sword Master. Linos marvels at this achievement, to which the maid warns him that if his aspiration is to become Miss Errol's guard, he may find himself swiftly replaced. Despite his attempt to brush off the notion, the door suddenly flings open, revealing Miss Errol, who sharply remarks that in this era, mere magic won't suffice for protection. She asserts that, having trained under the Holy Sword Master, she will personally oversee Linos's training, emphasizing the necessity of risking one's life to become a formidable barrier master. With a directive to follow her lead, Linos nearly succumbs to tears, anticipating his imminent demise, yet resolved to face the challenge ahead. Following a series of magical exercises, Miss Errol remarks lightly that she had anticipated more from Linos, considering the commendations bestowed upon him by Lady Urza and Falco. Expressing her disappointment, she observes Linos panting heavily on the ground, while Falco interjects playfully, urging her to go easy on him. Linos, still catching his breath, acknowledges Falco's point, commenting on the suddenness of her full-powered attack. Miss Errol feigns surprise, asserting that she had only utilized a fraction of her true strength, though she can't shake a feeling of frustration. Falco suggests they practice combining magic, to which Linos responds with dread, fearing the outcome. Despite Linos' protests, both mentors persist, reminding him of their promise to train him rigorously. Linos, overwhelmed, flees in tears, but their laughter echoes after him. Undeterred, he continues his training and studies under their watchful eyes. 4 years pass, and inside the palace, Basim Fawn Arden, the current head of the Basim family, expresses gratitude to Urza for accepting the invitation. Urza reciprocates, noting that such invitations from Whiten are a rarity, prompting laughter from the butler, who jokingly questions if her remark is laced with sarcasm. Urza counters his question with one of her own, prompting Whiten to ponder with a hand on his chin, inquiring about the well-being of those residing at the mansion. Lady Basim's smile widens as she delivers positive news. Together, they observe from the window the apprentice of Falco diligently honing his sword skills against both Miss Errol and Falco, neither of whom show any mercy. Miss Errol leaps from above, launching an attack that he successfully blocks, prompting her to declare the battle far from over. However, Falco intervenes, signaling an end to the training session. Miss Errol, visibly discontented, challenges his decision, but Falco reminds her of the difficulty in dismantling established barriers. Linos breathes a sigh of relief at the cessation of the intense practice, but his relief is short-lived as Falco calls him to attention, causing him to snap to focus, disregarding Miss Errol's lingering frustration. Falco remarks on Linos' significant growth in magical prowess since his arrival, affirming that it's time for his graduation examination. Linos, taken aback, realizes the time has come for him to complete his training. Falco reassures him, noting the strength of Linos' barrier, which now rivals that of the palace's barrier master. Encouraging Linos not to fret, Falco signals the culmination of his apprenticeship journey. Falco announces that Linos' test will be to single-handedly hunt the monster residing in the Renoa forest. Linos confirms if he refers to the one located in the northeast, to which Falco affirms. With a departure set for 3 days hence, Linos responds with a hesitant yes. On the day of departure, he finds Miss Errol standing beside him and questions her presence. She explains her intention to accompany him, citing rumors of an exceptionally formidable monster's lair within the forest. With a sparkle of determination in her eyes, she declares herself his bodyguard and expresses excitement at the prospect of hunting a formidable creature. Despite Linos' attempts to temper her enthusiasm, she urges him to hasten their departure. Within the forest, Miss Errol grows increasingly frustrated at their inability to locate the target, lamenting her inability to detect its presence. Linos, harboring impolite thoughts about her intense aura, suddenly senses danger and swiftly positions himself between Miss Errol and the monster that materializes before them, a Kars Cherole. Identifying the creature, Linos conjures a protective barrier, informing Miss Errol of the monster's formidable defense, impervious to both physical and magical attacks. Linos asserts that Miss Errol's conventional attacks will prove ineffective against the monster's formidable defense. Despite his warning, Miss Errol charges forward, determined to prove her sword skills. Landing a strike, she realizes the futility of her efforts as her blade merely grazes the monster's tough hide. Admitting defeat, she urges Linos to flee, but he intervenes, expressing his desire to attempt something else. Creating a magic circle, Linos explains his plan to deprive the monster of air within a barrier. Miss Errol is stunned by Linos' unconventional approach, realizing that he intends to defeat the monster without resorting to physical or magical attacks. As the creature collapses under the suffocating barrier, Linos, exhausted, celebrates their victory. Impressed by his ingenuity, Miss Errol commends Linos' remarkable magical prowess. As they contemplate their next steps, Miss Errol reveals a bag imbued with magic for storing items, suggesting they use it to transport the fallen monster. Linos, intrigued by the bag's capabilities, accepts her suggestion gratefully. Miss Errol assures Linos that he can easily harness the bag's power with his formidable magical abilities, emphasizing its significance as a Basim family heirloom and urging him to handle it with care. Gingerly, Linos accepts the bag, mindful of its importance. Miss Errol instructs him to chant apt when activating it, to which Linos complies, causing the massive beast to vanish into the bag in an instant. With his heart still racing from the adrenaline rush, Linos listens as Miss Errol explains the bag's retrieval process. Simply imagine what they wish to extract, and it will materialize. With a hesitant yet affirmative response, Linos acknowledges her instructions. Miss Errol, in high spirits, remarks on the deliciousness of the car's and eagerly anticipates their meal. Linos, taken aback, questions her intention to consume the creature. Perturbed by her nonchalant suggestion to retrieve the skin from its posterior, Linos struggles to contain his disgust. Undeterred, Miss Errol proposes gathering ingredients for their journey home, to which Linos agrees reluctantly. As they make their way back, Linos observes Miss Errol's enthusiasm for foraging, though he wears a troubled expression. She marvels at the various plants they encounter, expressing delight at the discovery of each edible item. Despite his reservations, Linos follows along, uncertain of what lies ahead. Linos expresses surprise at Miss Errol's unexpected interest in food. She explains that during her training, she typically consumes fruits and vegetables, with meals at the mansion prepared by the maid. Enjoying the freedom to select her own food while foraging adds an element of fun for her. Miss Errol suggests conducting their next training session in the forest, combining training with gathering food, a practical approach that appeals to both their needs. However, Linos redirects the conversation, reminding her of their master awaiting their return. Back at the house, Falco reacts with astonishment upon seeing the captured car's Charolais. He queries Miss Errol about her involvement, to which she explains Linos' clever use of a barrier to deprive the creature of air. Impressed, Falco praises Linos for his ingenuity, acknowledging his passing of the graduation exam. Lady Bassam, accompanied by the head butler Winton, commends Linos for his successful return. Grateful, Linos bows in acknowledgement. Behind him, Miss Errol beams proudly, suggesting they share the monster's meat with everyone for a grand feast. Lady Bassam enthusiastically agrees to have Falco prepare the car's Charolais for their feast, expressing her anticipation with a hearty laugh. Turning her attention to Linos, she expresses her gratitude and bows to him, noting the positive impact he's had since they started spending time together. Linos humbly insists he hasn't done much, but Lady Bassam insists he's brought joy with his presence. She reassures Linos of her support, encouraging him to confide in her if he encounters any difficulties. Affirming his importance to the household, she expresses her happiness at having him as part of their family. Overwhelmed by her kindness, Linos feels truly blessed, though he tries to hold back tears. Winton offers him a handkerchief, and Lady Bassam smiles warmly, reassuring him that she trusts in his abilities. Bassam Fawnarden expresses concern about Miss Errol's well-being, acknowledging his role in pushing her to take drastic actions. Despite his worries, he acknowledges her capability and resolves to ensure her safety while she's under his care. Linos listens attentively as Lady Bassam recounts the harrowing experiences Miss Errol endured, forced into marriage without consent, and subjected to nightly abuse as a young girl. The trauma she suffered left her frightened even of her own family upon her return, her once cheerful demeanor replaced by a profound sadness. Lady Bassam shares the pain she feels recalling Errol's suffering. Despite her past, Lady Bassam notes how Miss Errol now supports Linos in his training like a sister would. Linos, concerned, inquires about the well-being of the barrier master. Lady Bassam praises his capabilities and reveals that today, thanks to Linos' influence, Whiten transitioned from the mansion's head butler to her personal attendant, marking a significant shift in their household dynamics. Whiten, grateful for the acknowledgement, bows respectfully. Bassam Fawnarden acknowledges the change with a thoughtful hum, before shifting the conversation to Miss Errol's recent acceptance of an invitation to the salon. Lady Bassam explains the necessity of attending such events for the family's reputation, despite Errol's discomfort. She reveals that an unfortunate incident occurred during the gathering, but Linos adeptly diffused the situation by drawing parallels to an ancient fable, turning the tide in Errol's favor. Lady Bassam confirms that Errol received praise from other nobles for Linos' clever improvisation, but she chuckles, admitting that the fable was a fabrication. Bassam Fawnarden joins in the laughter, amused by Linos' ability to turn the situation to his advantage. Expressing a desire to thank Linos upon his return, Bassam Fawnarden assures Lady Bassam that everyone will be delighted to welcome him back. As Lady Bassam excuses herself, Bassam Fawnarden dismisses Winton, who departs with a respectful bow. Alone in his room, Bassam Fawnarden gazes out of the window, expressing anticipation for Linos' promising future. Meanwhile, Miss Errol calls out to Linos, proposing a training session in the Renoa forests. Linos, now 12 years old, brightens at the suggestion and readily agrees, ready to embark on the next phase of his journey.